Hello, David here at merchantaccounts.ca. Today I'm going to talk about how to set up credit card processing for a business. I'm going to explain the most important things that you should definitely know before you choose a processor. If you're starting that research process, you'll be well prepared by the end of this video. Stay tuned, I'm about to dig in a second. So here's the most important things, and I'm going to say it right from the start. There are misleading pricing models in the payments business. You want to make sure that you're not on a misleading pricing model. You have to be on either flat pricing or interchange plus pricing. I will explain that in a little more in just a moment. And the other thing is, don't end up locked into an unfair contract. Some payment processors have locked in contract terms 2 or 3 years. Others have month-to-month agreements. Unless you're a very large and very sophisticated merchant, you should be pushing for a month-to-month agreement. If you don't get it, you should move on to the next processor that will give you it. But let's roll it back a second and talk about those two pricing models, flat pricing and interchange plus pricing. Flat pricing is wonderful in the sense that it's absolutely simple to understand. It's easy to reconcile. An example would be, hey merchant, you have a flat rate of 3% per transaction, and you pay, magically enough, 3% per transaction. It doesn't change. If it's a foreign card, if it's a rewards card or an Air Miles card, it doesn't matter. You always pay the same easy to understand discount rate. The downside of that pricing model is the pricing is a little bit higher because the payment processor incurs costs from Visa and MasterCard. Those costs are called interchange costs. And rewards cards cost more than basic cards, which cost more than debit cards. So if you give a merchant a flat rate, it can't be a very, very low rate because the payment processor can't risk losing money on the transactions that you process. So that's the downside of flat pricing. You will pay a little bit higher of an overall cost. So I said there were two good pricing models. The second good pricing model is called interchange plus pricing. That's where the merchant gets passed through the exact interchange costs, whatever they are from Visa and MasterCard, for any given transaction. And I want to be very clear, I have other content about this on our channel. But interchange just means cost from Visa and MasterCard to the payment processor. In plain English, what the processor is saying is, hey, we don't care what type of card you process. We're going to take our true cost from Visa or MasterCard. We're going to pass it through onto you with a very clearly disclosed markup, and usually not a very big markup. That's the advantage of interchange plus pricing. It's a little bit harder to reconcile. It's harder to look at your statement and understand what's going on, but commercially, you're being given a very transparent and usually a very aggressive rate. So that's the best pricing model for larger or more higher volume merchants. But pricing isn't the only thing that's important, so let's dig into some other points here. So I suppose I should point out at this point in time, you should decide right from the start what type of pricing you want to be on. Do you care more about interchange plus pricing? Do you care more about flat pricing? Because not every payment processor supports every pricing model. So right away, if you, for example, wanted flat pricing, you need to reach out or make sure one of your early questions in your process can be, hey, do you support flat pricing or do you support interchange plus pricing? If you get the answer you don't like, then you can get on to the next folks. So the next question you're going to ask is, how do you want to take payments? Because there's different ways to do it. There are virtual terminal payments where you take orders over the phone and you key them into your computer. There are e-commerce payments. There's online invoice payments, which are very similar to e-commerce payments. That's where you're sending invoices by email and saying, hey Bob, if you want to pay this invoice, click on this link to go to my payment page. Recurring payments, automatic subscription type payments, and then traditional point of sale machines. Not every payment processor is the best at all of those. In fact, I'll tell you categorically, none are, no matter what the copy says. So at merchantaccounts.ca, we're a lot more e-commerce and card not present focused than traditional retail. So if a nationwide chain of gas stations called us, I'd be really happy about it. I would try to help them, but I'd be very transparent. We have more expertise in the online world. Now, I know your follow-up question might be, well, how am I supposed to know which payment processor is good at like what we do? Fair question. I think that's where you have to go to the website. You can't be haphazard in this process. Make a short list of payment processors you might work with and review the copy on their website. It should become very apparent quite quickly what they specialize in. If it kind of makes it sound like they specialize in everything, they're probably a larger processor. I'll leave it to your discretion if that's a good fit for your business. But my advice would be pick a processor that is particularly good at what you do, and it should be very apparent when you visit their website or the type of merchants that they excel in supporting. Now, all of this stuff is kind of a moot point if I don't talk about something that's so often overlooked: approval. What if you find a processor that quotes you a great rate, has the exact solution you need, specializes in your industry, and then you apply for an account and you get declined? Well, that would stink. So if you are a higher risk merchant, approval should be top of mind, as almost as important as rates, because I'm going to define what that means in a second. But if you contact the payment processor and get a really good quote and an otherwise fantastic service offering, but then they end up, for example, approving you, but they want to hold back a large percentage of your funds because they consider you to be a high-risk merchant, well, then all of a sudden, all of the benefits of that payment processor might go out the window, because if the processor is holding on to a bunch of your cash, it might negatively impact your business. Now, I need to address briefly what makes you a high-risk merchant. Again, lots of content about this on our channel and on our website. But if you take payment for a high-risk product or service, I'll give you a couple of examples. Casino gambling, travel because people pay for something today that they don't get until a long time in the future. I'll give you an example of a low-risk business. Low risk would be sales of, eyeglass frames. You buy your eyeglass frame, you get it within a week or so. That's pretty low risk, nothing too complicated there. It all depends on how much money you process and how much delivery window exists after you take that payment. So if you take a payment today but the customer doesn't get their stuff for a really long time in the future, you're probably a higher risk business. And then if you offer kind of like I don't have to explain it in too much detail. Casino gambling's kind of high risk. So you have to consider, am I a high-risk business? If you are concerned about that, I encourage you to reach out to us at merchantaccounts.ca. We could help you understand more about your business and the risk profile attached to your industry. But anyways, if you're a high-risk merchant, and I'm sorry for taking the winding path to get to this point, you need to work with a payment processor that's good at supporting higher-risk businesses. If you're a low-risk merchant, you should most likely be able to go pretty much anywhere. Apply that concept to startups as well. Some payment processors, startup, no problem. At merchantaccounts.ca, we love working with small businesses. Some payment processors are more risk-averse with younger and unproven businesses and want to work with more established clients. Again, this will come out in the wash as you apply at different places, but it's good to know this ahead of time because you can avoid a lot of wasted time. Now let's circle back to that topic of rates for a second. You should set some rate expectations in your mind before you contact a payment processor. Where you call and it's like, hey, we're looking at payment processing. We want to know what you could do for us. You should have a goal in mind, especially if you're working towards being on an interchange plus pricing model. You should know how much volume you process, and you should know roughly the risk profile of your business. Beyond that, there's a little more to think about, such as processing currencies. Do you want to process in US dollars, Canadian dollars, euros, sterling, South African rand, Japanese yen, whatever it is? If you have special processing currency requirements, that's going to take a lot of payment processors out of the mix. Remember, not every payment processor can handle every currency. Another point, even if they can process in foreign currencies, so at merchantaccounts.ca, we can process in US dollars and settle your money in US dollars. Some payment processors can process in US dollars, so the cardholder's card is charged in US dollars, great. But then you, if you're a Canadian merchant, might be forced to be paid, settled, receive your money in Canadian dollars. You don't want that. So at merchantaccounts.ca, we don't do that. It's called, what you want is like-to-like settlement. Don't let the payment processor do a currency conversion unless there was no alternative. Anyways, I don't want to go too much down the currencies track, but you have to think of special requirements, special functionality your business might need. On to another thing. Technical considerations. If you have an e-commerce business, and this is a big one, you need to be able to ensure that your shopping cart software on your website, the thing that powers those add to cart buttons on your website, the logic that keeps track of the stuff people want to buy as they browse your website, that has to be compatible with the payment gateway. Remember, your payment processor is going to provide two things for you. I have my clicker in this hand here. They're going to provide two things to you. One, the payment gateway, which is the technical thing your shopping cart talks to, and the merchant account. That's the banking component of the service. So your shopping cart software running on your website needs to know how to talk to the payment gateway. That's the concept of integration and compatibility. Getting on towards the end here, but super important, the contract term, as I mentioned at the top, make sure you're not on a locked-in contract. Make sure it's month to month, and make sure there's no cancellation fees. What if it's a month-to-month contract with some sort of cancellation fee? I don't know, seems unreasonable to me, but I feel like it could happen. So really read your contract. Don't just take what's said to you in an email, read your merchant agreement. Boy, I'm going to say that twice. Read your merchant agreement. And then finally, what type of support are you going to need? Are you the type of merchant that's growing? Maybe you're going to not process in foreign currencies, but you might someday. Or you might even want a domestic merchant account in the US in the future to avoid cross-border fees. I don't want to go too deep into this topic. We should spend a moment thinking about what unique functionality, or in what ways might we grow where we grow out of the solution that we have today. For example, maybe you just need a virtual terminal. You're just going to call in and process orders, but you know you kind of are in the back of your mind, you might do an e-commerce website someday. In that case, go with a payment processor that doesn't just do virtual terminal. They should have the ability to support e-commerce merchants as well. Now, I hope this was helpful. I hope this kind of gave you some tips on what to think about when you're setting up credit card processing. Identify your requirements, your pricing, approval, contract negotiation, technical considerations. I hope this was helpful. I better stop here. If you have any questions, though, about establishing payment processing for your business, do reach out to us at merchantaccounts.ca. We can help Canadian, US, European, and British merchants. Thanks for watching. Hope you found it helpful. Have a good day there. Bye now.